You know the feeling. You hit the hole on a heavy squat and you start to feel your upper back letting go. It feels like you're fighting for your life to not dump the bar over your head, but somehow you finish the lift and get it back in the rack, only for somebody to walk across the gym and tell you that your upper back isn't strong enough and you need to start training it harder. But if your upper back rounding is like most people's, don't listen to that guy. It's not an upper back problem. So if you are crumpling on a heavy squat, we're going to get into what is going on, what you need to be thinking about, and what we are going to do in order to fix it. And I know, everyone wants to say upper back rounding on squats is an upper back issue. It does make sense on the surface. You see the upper back round, we just need to unround it. Boom, video done, train your upper back more. But it's not that simple. If the rounding is only happening as the bar gets heavy or as you're pushing deeper into the set, it's not an upper back strength thing, and it's likely not a skill thing. Let's logic this out, starting with looking at the upper back in isolation. Because what is happening as the upper back rounds? In general, two things. The upper back musculature will need to lengthen for that thoracic flexion to occur. And as that flexion happens, the bar's weight will begin to have more leverage on the upper back. Rounding is going to force your upper back to do more work. If we're entering thoracic flexion during a squat and don't keep thoracically flexing until our face hits the floor, your upper back is doing more work than it would be otherwise because that rounded position is forcing it to. And it's going to feel like it's an upper back problem because your upper back will be working super hard to recover from the rounding, but it's not upper back weakness. You are rounding because your upper back is strong, or at least stronger than something else in the chain. Like, think about what's going on anytime you actually want to train your thoracic erectors. You're going to round on a good morning. You're going to round on a row. You're going to round on a stiff leg deadlift. Rounding so we can extend makes the erectors work, and you're rounding on your squat because your erectors are more ready to work than your hips or quads are. Don't believe me? Let's hop in a time machine and look at Darrell's squat a few years ago, because it is a prime example of the first reason we might need to round to finish a heavy squat. It was in the mid-sixes and kind of a shit show. Everyone was telling him it was an upper back issue, that his upper back needed to be stronger, but dude was already deadlifting in the high eights and had one of the strongest upper backs I'd ever seen. But what got him well into the sevens on squats with less rounding than he used to have in the sixes wasn't doing more upper back work. He's actually doing less now than he used to, but doing more quad work. So what gives? Well, if we look at what's happening underneath at the moment the upper back starts to round, the picture gets super clear. When his back rounds, his knees are able to shoot back without the bar raising up. The rounding was letting his knees extend without the quads needing to move the weight. He was going from a position where he wasn't strong enough to stand up to a position that may be less pretty, but a position that he had the strength to recover from. The solution? Getting more quads into the picture. He put a ton of effort to bring up his hack squat and leg press. We used a box squat as a tool to learn how to stay in the legs better, and that could probably be another video in itself to piss off all of the multiply nerds, but you don't have to sit way back on a box squat if you sit forwards into the quads and use the box as a checkpoint to ensure you're reversing without going into the hips. They can be an insanely valuable tool for learning how to stay in your legs better. Anyways, the stronger his legs got, the less he needed to round at top end weights, and the bigger those top end weights became. So if the upper back is rounding at the reversal and your knees shoot back, it's a quad problem, not an upper back problem. Make your quads stronger and you will have to round less. Now, what if you are rounding on the eccentric? Once again, we need to look at what the upper back rounding is allowing to happen underneath. Because when we look at the shape change between a neutral stack versus rounding, the rounding is going to allow the bar to get closer to the hips in the plane perpendicular to gravity, which is the distance we are worried about when we're thinking about the bar's leverage on your butt cheeks. Not only that, but when we round through the upper back, less true hip hinge is required and less hip flexion we'll need to get to the hole. So the hips are going to have an easier time leverage-wise, and they're not going to have to move as far. We're rounding away from needing to use our hips. The solution? Bring up your hip strength. What do we want to do here? Train the hips without allowing the upper back to change our leverages. A strict good morning can be great because if we reach back without rounding into a perfect hinge, we're going to ensure the hips are working while getting feedback on how well our upper back is set. If you find yourself needing to round here, the answer is simple. You're just going too heavy for what your hips can handle at the current moment, and you're trying to cheat it by rounding just like you would on your squat. So keep it light enough that the hinge is perfect, push back into those butt cheeks, and then squeeze them up to the top. If you got access to it, I also really like a belt squat here since the belt is on the hips. We're gonna have a harder time cheating leverage away from them. And if we can make sure that we are getting a good hinge into the bottom, the hips will have to work. The stronger we get the hips, the better we're gonna be able to use them, and the less we're going to have to round in order to avoid the hips. So your upper back problem probably isn't an upper back problem. Figure out the real weak point that is making rounding advantageous to your squat, make that thing stronger, and you will squat more. And if you don't know what's going on with your technique or how to fix it, hit the link below, join the team, because I'm going to give you in-depth breakdowns on all of your lifts on the same day, every single day, so that I can help you set up your programming to address your weak points, dial in your technique, and get you making better progress than ever, no matter what it is that's holding you back.